This video may contain violence, sexual themes, and a lot of swearing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey TTRPG player, you know that one ability your character has that you never use because you only get it once per day and you don't want to waste it? Go ahead and use it. You're gonna get a rest soon. I promise you. You're gonna regret not using it because it's cool as fuck.
Alright, episode 1 of D&D game. Episode 1, the pitch. So I originally pitched this game to 8 people. One dropped out because of life stuff, but so originally pitched this to 8 people. I gave them a one sheet. I say it was a one sheet, but it was multiple pages about my requirements for their characters, what I was looking for, a playlist for them to make so that I can get the general vibe of their character, and then a brief history of the kingdom and town that they live in. This plus a 10-page world lore document is what they got to start with. I think I gave everybody 2 months to make all 3 characters, and if anybody needed accommodations in their creations, we worked those all out individually. Then after everybody turned in their character, I took all those characters and I picked a group.
I thought this was a fishing minigame for RPGs. It's actually an entire game.
Riverbend is a tabletop adventure game where players get a boat, some gear, and a magic cat. Go on a fishing quest in a fantastical and dangerous river basin. It has random generators to create a unique map for players to explore, complete with points of interest to discover,
including villages, landmarks, curios, magical artifacts, terrifying aberrations, and most importantly, fishing spots.
Players fish by dropping dice on an end sheet mat that determines how many fish they get and what size. Then you roll to reel them in. Better fishing gear lets you drop more dice, bigger dice, or makes hooked fish easier to catch.
I thought it was great for a one-shot, and it was really easy to prep and run, operating entirely on the random tables provided in the book. English is not the author's first language, so some rules have to be interpreted, and some of the tables could be more evocative. But all in all, Riverbend, definitely worth playing if you're looking for an RPG about fishing.
This is my outfit for the day, and also likely what I will be wearing when I fade into the mists of the woods, never to be seen again, except by local children who will tell tales of me and throw rocks at my window, except for one that finds out I'm actually pretty chill and I might give them a sword or something. This is my outfit for the day, and also likely what I will be wearing when I fade into the mists of the woods, never to be seen again, except by local children who will tell tales of me and throw rocks at my window, except for one that finds out I'm actually pretty chill and I might give them a sword or something.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Nah.
Follow me down to the lights of Galway, where there's fine sailors walking the town and waiting to meet the ladies there. Watch now, here's
Reddit user They Stank has been having some DM problems. Their players just keep smashing through their encounters. They Stank talks about how they threw a werebear at their level 4 party and the Goliath took it down in only a few turns. Now this DM is about to send their players after a bunch of cultists and they are looking for some way to ratchet up the challenge. Here are my suggestions. First of all, more enemies, or at the very least, more turns for your enemies. Action economy is so important to finagling balance for an encounter. If you put a powerful creature in front of your party, but it only has 1 turn's worth of actions to use, your party will likely completely destroy that monster unless that monster is much too powerful, knocking a party member out every time it attacks. This can be fixed a couple of ways, including a multi-attack and or giving your monster legendary actions, so you can be attacking more, but also reacting to the party's movements and plans in the middle of their turns. Second, target your party's weaker saving throws every once in a while. It's not game ruining to make the Barbarian make an intelligence save every once in a while. Let them tank for the most part, but once in a while throw them a curveball. And third, environmental effects or pre-existing magical effects. Terrain and weather can be amazing things to massively increase challenge in what feels like a much less biased way to players. And in terms of having enemy spellcasters or magical beings, let them have those magical effects up ahead of time before the party arrives. Things like mirror image can really make a spellcaster stick around for a lot longer. What advice do you have for your fellow DMs? Throw it down below.
DMs and TikTok, do you want to know how to be a truly evil DM and make it so your players absolutely hate an NPC? Well, here's how. What do adventurers love more than anything? Well, it's loot, gold pieces, and magical items. So have it so there's an asshole in the town that the party lives in who is appointed by the king himself to come and collect taxes on all of the adventurers, and they take 15% of all earnings from any job that includes anything that they have looted. Have it so these evil interrogator NPCs cast Zone of Truth on the entire party and then bombard them with questions about how much money they made on the job, how much money they looted, how much items they found. Hell, you can even throw in at the start of the campaign a high-level adventuring party goes out to fight a dragon and then never returns, and then rumors start that they were just killed by the dragon. In reality, the king and the king's guards assassinate these high-level adventurers to make it so they never get powerful enough to actually overthrow the government so that they can just milk every single gold piece out of these newer adventurers. Make it so some mid-level adventurers at the start of the campaign are their friends that eventually go missing, and they maybe will look into it and find out, holy shit, they were murdered by the king's guard. And when the party finds out the king is evil and the guards are all evil, trust me, they will love to overthrow this corrupt government as they have been getting robbed of their valuable loot throughout the entire campaign by these assholes. I've never had a DM impose a tax before. How pissed off would you be if you had 1,800 gold exactly from the last job? You just saved up enough to get your plate mail, and the king's like, no, you owe me about 200 gold pieces, and now they can't afford that plate mail until the next adventure? I'd be beyond furious. And that's how you become a truly evil DM. You just tax your players like in the real world. You play a tabletop RPG to get away from the real world. Guess what? You still have to pay tax here. Hell, if you want to be extra evil with it, take a weak-ass magic item from them. Doesn't even matter. It could be a shitty +1 magic item. They can be level 9. I'd be pissed off if they took my +1 sword. So how to be the most evil DM ever? Just impose a tax on your party that's outrageous and having the occasional magic item taken away from them.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but whoever is about to give up on their dreams, just so you know, there exists a transgender knight somewhere out there in Canada who makes gay chainmail. And I mean lots of gay chainmail. And gay frogs. And yes, people pay me to do this. Don't give up on your crazy dreams. They can come true and they can be weirder than you expect. Just remember to put in the work. And rest. Sleep is important. Right, Humphrey, sleep is very important. Now get out there and do whatever weird thing it is you want to do. I have to go on a quest to make it more gay.
GM tip of the day. Don't be a GM. Kind of. So, once you fall into the GM trap, you're going to be there. Those of us out there that are the forever GMs. I've been GMing for approximately 30 years at this point, and I have only played probably 15 games in the last 30 years, and it's because I love being a GM. But here are the reasons why. I love world creation. More importantly, I love collaborative world creation. So that's one of the reasons why I create settings that can be slapped down anywhere, because they are not specific. They don't have specific players or specific architectures, but kind of more of an invitation to creativity. So when you're a GM, it depends on the reason why you want to be one. So give it some thought. Do you love collaborative storytelling? Do you like giving challenging things to your players to do? Do you like to see and encourage players to think creatively? But there's a couple of reasons why not to be a GM. Number one, if you want to be a storyteller. If you want to be a storyteller, write an author, because you're going to find out real quickly that the story you want to tell is never the story that happens. You've been a player. You know how badly you throw things off the rails. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're lucky enough to have an amazing GM that when you guys go hog wild off the left-hand field, they keep right up with you. That's a good GM. Someone that lets you be the leader, the driver of the story. That's something to consider when being a GM, is that your players are the ones that are in the driver's seat, not the GM. I know that seems counterproductive. GMs are God. I'm the one that even says that, hey, all TPKs are GM's fault, right? How is that possible when the player's in the driver's seat? The thing is that the GM has the responsibility to allow the players to experience the game the way that they see fit. There are 4 players at the table, maybe 6, maybe more depending on what type of game you're playing, and you're one GM. You are the facilitator of fun. At the same time, there are rules to be followed. The reason why you're a GM is because you love it. And if you don't love being a GM, be a player. Find someone else to GM. And a lot of us feel like we have to GM because we've been GM for so long. Teach someone else. Ask if someone else wants to be a GM, and you'll mentor them. You'll show them. So for you forever GMs, don't be afraid to put someone else in the assistant's seat. Because remember, the players are in the driver's seat, even though we say that the GMs are. And it's all one giant dichotomy that never seems to make sense. Today was the GM rant of the day, disguised as a GM tip. See you guys next time.
Happy New Year, friends. We had a fun 2022 year together.
Friends with you till the end. Things you help you win when it gets tough. And when you're scared, they're gonna be right there. So hold on to your friends. I was right there when you struggled with Ryan. And you were right there when my dad went away. And all of the weekends we stayed out, all of the hangovers laid on the couch. Yeah, the times we don't talk about. And the boyfriends may change, and so will our second names. But one thing stays the same is us. Yeah. We'll make no mistakes, we ain't to blame. They bring out the best in us.
Hey, you want to talk about drugs? In all seriousness, though, I was listening to the wonderful podcast Dungeons and Daddies, and some shenanigans that happened in an early episode got me thinking about fantasy drugs. So let's talk about them. Obviously, first of all, you should talk to all your players at the table about if they're comfortable with the topic before you bring it to the table. If everyone's cool with a little drug joking or playing around with the idea, then yeah, go for it. That being said, here are some fun ideas for some weird drugs for your magic world. Clone dust. This one is a powder that when blown into someone's face or they inhale it, they start to double until there's 1d6 worth of clones of them. No one's entirely sure which one the real one is, and everyone gets real paranoid. But then, after a few minutes, it wears off and everyone comes back together, still unsure if they're the real one for a little while. The next one is Zephyr Bloom. This is a cute little cloud-shaped flower that can be mixed into tea, and when the person drinks it, they become light as a feather for a little while. Unfortunately, during this time, they're also convinced that they've become a cloud. Ancestor Root. This is a root that the player can chew, similar to ayahuasca in its effects, but during this time the player can see one of their ancestors of their choosing. This whole thing, no one's entirely sure if the ancestor actually comes back, or if it's just a vision, but either way, it's a good chance for some role-playing. Jumble Juice. Jumble Juice is served in a big-ass cauldron. Everyone that takes a sip of it from the same cauldron has to roll a d10, and anyone that has the same number switches bodies for an hour. Spectral Cybin. This weird-looking ghostly mushroom with a skull on the top of its cap can be ingested, and for 2 minutes, the player becomes a specter. After that 2 minutes, they come back to their body, but during the time that they're a specter, they're convinced they died. Marijuana. This herb can be ingested, and the player rolls, and if they get an even number on a d6, then they are convinced that the first person they see is their bestest friend of all time and will tell them everything honestly. If they roll the other side of the evens and odds, then they are convinced this person is absolutely out to get them. Also, makes you oddly hungry for a while. Bluegrass is an herb that if the player eats it, then they have to sing for the next hour anytime they speak. Lastly is Loosey Goosey. This is a powder that a lot of assassins or fighters will use for some underhanded tricks. When this dust is blown into someone's face or they accidentally ingest it, it gives them disadvantage on all dexterity and athletics checks and attack rolls because they can't control their body quite right anymore. Anyway, have fun, and let me know what you guys think. If you have any more fun ideas, let me know. Bye.
Yo DMs, do you sometimes have trouble making your players fear your big bad evil guy, and in their first interaction with them, they're always like, alright, come on buddy, then put him up, let's fight. I can help you. Alright, all you have to do is have them fight a creature that's a little bit above what they should be fighting, something that's gonna do a lot of damage, really strong, tons of HP, just some big dude out there. And then halfway through this fight, have this creature turn and just run absolutely terrified as your big bad evil guy walks in. Just the sight of whoever this is so terrifying that they just have to flee. The best way to make something scary is not to tell you it's scary, but to show you it's scary from like the world around it.
Like bards, clerics are technically an RPG class that might refer to themselves as their class name. However, that doesn't mean we can't get creative with what they call themselves. After all, in our world, the word cleric is most often used for Christianity. But there are also rabbis for Judaism, imams for Islam, oshos for Buddhism amongst other titles, and pujas for Hinduism. Even in a general sense, the words priest or monk would work. Beyond general words for priests or religious leaders, your cleric may be chosen by their god for a specific task, which opens up the option of being called a prophet. Your cleric's profession could even change throughout their adventuring career. A simple priest may achieve enough power or renown to become a prophet, or climb up their religious hierarchy like you can in the Catholic Church. Perhaps you were a mere servant of your faith, or a follower of your god, who set out on a journey, thus becoming a pilgrim. Do some searching and work with your game master to decide what your cleric's order might refer to their religious leaders as. But always remember to be respectful when pulling from real-world religions and cultures. Next time we'll visit a very similar cultural space with druids. So I couldn't find the original video to stitch onto this one, but someone on this app made the fantastic point that characters in tabletop RPGs like D&D probably wouldn't refer to themselves as the name of the class that you play as for them. I'd like to expand on that discussion a bit to provide some tips and examples of what your character might call themselves based on what class they choose in D&D or Pathfinder or any other tabletop RPG. The perfect example of this point are barbarians. The term barbarian generally refers to someone who lives outside of whatever society is calling them the barbarian. Historically, what we consider barbarians have never referred to themselves as barbarians. Not unless it was like, you call us barbarians? As such, in-game, your barbarian should probably take great offense to being called that. If they fit the classical interpretation of the term, they would probably call themselves a berserker or a warrior of clan such and such, or from family who's-a-what's-it. Stay tuned for next time when we talk about bards. Bards are one of the classes in RPGs that would actually probably refer to themselves as their class name. However, this isn't the only option. Depending on the setting or the background, your bard may prefer to be called a minstrel, or a jester, or even a jongleur. If your character is dedicated more towards telling stories than they are singing, they might refer to themselves as a poet, or simply a storyteller. But let's say your bard is more dedicated to the battlefield, then they might refer to themselves as a skald. Singing and storytelling is as old and widespread as humanity itself. So look to the arts and cultures around the world for inspirations as to what to call your bard. Next time, we'll talk about an equally widespread profession when we take a look at what clerics might call themselves.
Have any of you noticed how boring vanilla barbarians are in Dungeons & Dragons? Even Dusty Peach is bored with them, which is why she had to come tell me her opinion up close and personal. The thing is, I kind of thought that I hadn't played with a barbarian in my party before because everyone just kind of leaned towards fighter instead. Barbarian and fighter are very similar on the outside, but when you start diving into it, barbarian is a lot more boring. I mean, the only really cool feature about being a barbarian is the rage feature and how it expands over time, but even then it's like, okay, so you get angry, you do more damage, and you can move faster, and you can succeed on checks easier. It's boring. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. I should put like a little counter on the screen. It's boring. But yeah, any party that I've played with or in has never had a barbarian in the actual party. The most experience that I have really with barbarians at all, the vanilla barbarians that come from D&D, is the Adventure Zone, the season with the school, and that Travis was the DM for. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head because I only listened to like a third of it. Literally the only saving grace for a barbarian in vanilla Dungeons & Dragons is the path of the Totem Warrior. So if you don't know, if you are like me and you've never played with a barbarian before, there are two different paths that you can choose from at... Hi there. There are two different paths you can choose from at level 3. There's the path of the Berserker and the path of the Totem Warrior. And the Berserker is basically like, man, you get extra mad and people are scared of you. But the Totem Warrior is super cool, and let me tell you why. So the main thing that the path of the Totem Warrior goes down is this journey through finding primal forces and obtaining strength through them. And essentially it is pulling on animals and their primal strength and utilizing that for yourself. So the 3 examples that the D&D Player's Handbook gives you are the bear, the wolf, and the eagle. And you can do different things based on which animals there are. I'm sure you can homebrew the crap out of this and have like an entire list of animals that you could choose from, which is one of the things that I think would make the barbarian a lot more worthy of your time. All I'm saying is that you haven't been following this TikTok page for long, then I will let you guys all know that I am working on a huge project right now, severely homebrewed, and this is one of the first things that I'm getting my grubby little fingers all over and changing the hell out of. And if you want to follow along while I'm doing this homebrew stuff and giving you guys tips, go ahead and follow me over on TikTok, and you can check out my Patreon as well.
Hey, this is Dan from King Leo D&D, and I am starting kind of a fun little journey here that I want to invite people into. So over the last 3 or 4 days, I have just become obsessed with using Chat GPT to create D&D content. It's just been really fun and really cool to see the way that this tool could be used. And so I'm going to invite you into this. If you are curious or interested to see some of the stuff that I've been able to do with it, I'm just going to build some of that information out. I'm going to do a couple different things with this. I'm going to keep posting videos of particular threads and areas that have become very useful as a dungeon master. And then also I'm going to create a folder on a Google account, and I'm going to share that link and just start to archive a lot of the really helpful stuff that can maybe be one AI generated D&D hub for like a campaign or a story or just specific monsters and stuff like that. I think is going to be really cool. So if you want to follow along, join here. I'm going to do it all on this profile right here, and I'm going to start posting some videos today and get some of this stuff out there. One final note on this too. I already know, because it's in me too, that there's a lot of kind of resistance and pushback of like the loss of creativity that happens using something like AI generated content. I'll probably make some videos on it later too. I know that some people are gonna just hate this content and feel like it's just taking away from the creative process. I hear that, I agree with you, and I also know that we cannot separate the impact that something like AI generation is going to have on D&D. So we're just going to explore it. I know we've got different feelings about it, and we'll talk about that too. We'll get into it. Let's just talk about it together. In this video, I'm going to talk just a brief overview of what Chat GPT actually does, and then some of the ways that I think that that's particularly helpful for dungeon masters, and some specific things that you can do with it that's absolutely wild. Really, really cool stuff. Okay, so this Chat GPT, if you don't know what it is, can be found at chat.openai.com/chat. It's this chatbot feature that has the ability to respond to all of these things that you can text into it. It remembers what you said within the conversation, so it gets really dynamic and developed with you. And then it bases a lot of this, all of it, out of the histories of texts and written stuff that has been updated into its backlog and things that it uses to then populate the information that it. So naturally, I immediately latched onto this as like, oh gosh, what can I do D&D wise with this? And so just as a couple of examples, I've actually had it DM for me a campaign that I helped it create, and then had it roll a random player for me, which was like a level 5 barbarian or a fighter or something. And then it DM'd for me, and I was able to interact with it, and it kept asking me like to make rolls, and then every time it asked me to make a roll, I would just respond, roll for me, and then it would do that and describe what happened. And then after I did that a bunch of times, I even said, I always want you to roll for me. And then once I put that in, every time it came to a point to a roll, it just rolled for me instead of like that weird clunky, you roll for me, no, you do it. And so then it even developed that interaction to where the campaign ran extremely smoothly, and it was super fun. And I was like, whoa, we just did that. We just built this. Me and this weird chat bot developed a campaign, and then it ran it for me. So that was super fun. And then also I've done some stuff with it where it's like creating monster stat blocks for me, creating magical items, creating lore around them. And I'll get so much more into that in the next videos. But like, that's how this thing works. It has this ability to use a ton of background information that you can even filter in a particular way. And then you just rein that in and develop it to then create content with you and for you in such fascinating ways. Can't wait to get more into it. I hope this is interesting to you too. All right, buckle up. I'm going fast. I've already tried to make this video 4 times, but I keep running out of time. But there's so much cool stuff for this. I'm doing AI, Chat GPT stuff. I'm creating D&D content with it. I've got to show you this dragon I was able to. I gave Chat GPT the prompt, make a stat block for an adult echo dragon, new thing I was working with an ability called reverberating breath. Boom, it gave it to me. Adult Echo Dragon, Huge Dragon, Neutral, Armor Class 21. Here are its stats. Immunities, Resistances, Challenge Rating, Echoing Roar Ability, Reverberating Breath, really cool. 120-foot line, 10-foot wide, DC 19 dex save or take 18 d6 thunder damage on a failed save or half as much on success. In addition, the area hit with a blast, difficult terrain for 1 minute. So cool, very on brand. Love that it was able to develop that. I noticed it was missing some legendary actions, so I asked it to make some for me. We got Thunderous Flap, Deafening Shriek, Crashing Charge. Really cool. I'd probably tweak them a bit, but again, it's developing this theme, it's interacting with me, it's doing some really neat stuff. Here's, just freaking look at this. I said, okay, can you create 3 magical items for me for a D&D 5th edition campaign that could be made from this dragon after it dies? It said, sure thing. Boom. Echoing Blade. It does extra thunder damage. You can stun enemies with it once per day. Boots of Thundering Worm. Extra movement speed. You stomp on the ground with it, and then it sends out a thunder wave and can knock enemies prone. Scale of Resonance. When you take thunder damage, you can choose to echo it back out once per day. So many cool on-brand items coming from this dragon that it created just from giving it some prompts and guiding the direction it's going. So I asked it to create some lair for me. It gave me some lair actions. And then I was like, oh, what kind of loot and treasures does this thing have? Now, what kind of loot and treasure would this Echo Dragon have? And it gave me the like, oh, it has gems, it has this, it has other, blah, blah, blah. And it gave me the typical dragon answers. But then it said, well, it probably also has musical instruments in it, because this dragon loves music. And I was like, freaking yes, the Echo Dragon in this cave. That's like beautiful sounds, yes. So then I said, create 3 magical musical instruments that are always playing in this dragon's lair. And it did. It gave me a magical lyre, it gave me something called the singing harp, and also the thundering drum, and it described the sounds that these things make. And then check this. So then I was like, yeah, make me this lair action associated with the musical instruments. And it said, you got it, boss, Echoing Resonance. So the lyre emits this haunting melody that echoes and resonates throughout the air, causing all creatures within 60 feet of the dragon to make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened for a minute on a failed save. And I was like, oh, that's weird. That's kind of exactly like the frightful presence that the dragon already has. But here, literally, additionally, any creature that is frightened of the dragon when the lair action is used becomes incapacitated with fear, unable to take actions or reactions until the end of its next turn. It knew that and was like, yeah, it's the same, but it gets worse. It gets worse if they fail both. And I'm like, this is brilliant. Got another avenue for exploring Chat GPT for D&D style content. This one is going to go with a little bit of a weird route, for creating a very fleshed out NPC, kind of an evil character that I was just playing around with, and it just kept going and going. As I've been going through this, I've just been kind of responding to what Chat GPT is doing with just like, oh, this makes me curious, let me ask more about it. And so I started by doing like, create a foraging rules system, and then tell me some of the like fruits and natural resources that somebody could forage. And this eventually got me into like, oh, create like 4 fantasy beasts that are generally like cute and adorable. And it came up with these really funny things. The puff skunk, a small fluffy creature with a body shaped like a skunk, and it releases like a really pleasant odor. There's a furry gnat, a mole mite, which is like a combination between a mole and a termite, which is really neat. A glitter bat, a fluff tail, with these really funny descriptions. And then I was like, well, make a monster version of the puff skunk, please. And so it was like, here you go, puff skunk king. And it gave me like all these stats and abilities and stuff that was really, really neat. And I'm sorry for my chaos, but I was like, all right, give me some type of evil druid who controls the puff skunk king. And it freaking gave me Morgathia the Maleficent with appearance and background, abilities and powers, personality, goals, weaknesses, the whole gamut for this NPC. And I was like, let's just keep having fun. What are 3 spells Morgathia could have used that she created? And it gave me some. It wasn't formatted right, so I told it to format them, and it fixed it for me. And so I'm just playing around here and making this content fit in ways that it's like, oh, shape it this way, do it this way, and it's getting better and better. I want to highlight 2 really cool elements of what you're able to do that I just think is really helpful as a writer. I feel like books are always really hard to develop. It always takes so much time. You have to put so much effort into getting everything right. So I said write 5 possible books found in Morgathia's library along with their names and descriptions of the covers and a brief excerpt from each one. Y'all, Necromancy for Beginners, cover of the book made from human skin, skull, crossbones, bound in black leather. Excerpt is a little description of like Necromancy 101. We've got the Book of Shadows, the Grimoire of Blood Magic, the Codex of Forbidden Lore, the Tome of Elder Gods, like all this stuff that's like, and here's little excerpts, and here's what it looks like on the outside. The fact that it creates this content right in the theme of exactly what you are doing is immensely helpful. And then another tool I think is super helpful too. I said, can you write 4 excerpts from Morgathia's journal? And then boom, you get the power of nature is intoxicating. Each day I grow stronger as I delve deeper into the mysteries of the forest. I have learned to command the elements themselves and call forth the spirits of the land. Soon nothing will stand in my way. The character has come to life.
Oh, hello, traveler. Welcome back. You have something for me. That's right. I don't have a side quest for you. No self-care tasks or anything like that. You have leveled up to the point where you have something for me, because you see, in all of the time that you have heard me say, attention's a basic human need, and your worth is not your productivity, and you're not a burden, and you're not too much. Well, over time in a process, as you heal and you kind of take that in, well, for a lot of people, that triggers a very heavy grief process. And over time, that gets very heavy. It can feel very heavy as you start to realize sometimes what you missed out on, maybe what you're still missing out on. And anger, grief, all of those heavy emotions surrounding the process of grieving what you missed out on, it can be really hard. It can be a lot. So if you need to, this is your rest point. This is your checkpoint to stop. And I want you to give me some of the grief. You're overburdened. So what I want you to do, if you need to, you can close your eyes. Just kind of like bring it all forward into your hands to mine. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to carry it either. I'm just going to store it. It will have its use at another time, okay? So, what you're going to do for me, okay, brave adventurer, you're going to give me all of that grief that you've been carrying, whatever amount it is that you need to leave here, just drop it right here for me. All of that. There you go. Oh my goodness, good job. You were carrying so much. That was a lot. That was a lot of strength that you should not necessarily have had to be displaying, but you made it. You did so good. Yes, you did. You did amazing. Okay, I am so proud of you. So, you know that you can come back. You can refresh this checkpoint anytime you are carrying too much. And you need to lighten that load, okay? So, safe travels. Okay, there'll be more side quests for you later.
Is a green dragon's meat poisonous? Why or why not?
Very likely, yes, but not for the reason you would probably think. So, green dragon's breath weapon is poison, we all know that. It's immune to the poison condition. I've got the monster manual in front of me. What makes me think the answer to this is yes, is that the green dragon eats plants and animals from the forest, and there are definitely plants in the forest that would be poisonous, and there are probably animals that the green dragon might have eaten that would also be poisonous, so maybe it eats a snake or something like that. So what that means is that since this thing has blanket immunity to poison, there could be essentially an infinite amount of poison in its system. Its favorite food could be death cap mushrooms. So I would say based on that, it is very likely that the meat of the green dragon would in fact be poisonous. But what do you think?
Here's something that you can use for your D&D games that's actually useful instead of the last thing I said, which was just kind of silly to fuck with your players. This is something I made years ago. It looks like a character sheet, but what it actually is a character sheet with printouts of the class, race, and abilities in there. I love using this. This is the best thing I've ever made in my life. You give them a character sheet on the front page, you bind it with a little spiral bind, and then you just have in there, hold on. You have in there the player's handbook page of what they get at each level. I'm sorry, I could probably just do this also. Just do that. Yeah, isn't that better? Class features, this is a cleric one, so it's got cleric abilities in it. It's got everything that your player's going to need. I made this in case it was a multi-class with a monk. Cleric monk multi-class is my favorite in the game. Don't at me. I love doing this. And then if they have spells, you can give them a page of spells. And this is fantastic for new players. Okay, bye.
Who is the most proud man here? These ones who thought they would fly a city? Or the man who thought he would teach me a lesson? I'll tell you why I spit on your forgiveness. I'll tell you why I loathe your redemption. To reach a hand down to somebody, they need to be beneath you! And I'm beneath nobody. You wanted to understand me. Then you should have accepted that I was right!
And he pulls the back of your head and rips the skin off of your skull.
Oh my!
If you're anything like me, filling out all of the information for a tavern in your tabletop RPG D&D setting can just get really cumbersome after the 5th, 10th, 15th, 100th time of doing it. And so let's check out what Chat GPT can create, given some good prompts and direction to make a tavern with everything from the menu, the band, the feel, interesting NPCs, social encounters, all of that I'm going to cover in this video. If this is your first time watching, I've got a thread of a bunch of other videos that I've been making just playing around with this AI to kind of figure out some other things, so go check out some of those others to see the way that we're setting this up and some of the initial prompts we're using to get into this setting. The first thing I asked for was a name for this tavern, and I said make it whimsical but feel welcoming in a busy city as well. And it came up with the Enchanted Hearth, conjuring up images of cozy fireplace and warm welcome, while also hinting at the possibility of magical surprise. Now this is where Chat GPT really shines. I responded to this and just asked who runs this tavern and how did they come across owning it. Let me show you what popped. Look at how detailed this is. The Enchanted Hearth is owned by a gnome named Tilly Sprigglefizz. Former adventurer, grew up in constant danger, wanted a more peaceful life. One day, exploring a forest outside of the city, stumbled upon an abandoned tavern that had fallen into disrepair. So, you set this up in the woods outside of your city. You've got this little bit of a background. You see that Tilly recreated this tavern with a little bit of magic, colorful decor, whimsical knickknacks, comfortable seating, all of this stuff. Word booms and spreads with this welcoming atmosphere that drew in customers all over the city. And then it just became a major gathering spot for merchants and adventurers. Tilly may have left her adventuring days behind, but she's found a new kind of adventure. In running the Enchanted Hearth, she takes pride in providing a safe and welcoming space for all who enter, and she's always happy to share a story with one or two of her patrons. You get a brief history, you get a personality for this owner, all really quick, ready to plug into your campaign. I'm going to do a little bit more digging. Let's figure out what type of food is going to be served at this place and who's cooking it and what all that's like. The prompt I'm giving to do that is who cooks at this tavern, what type of menu do they offer, and then I said include reasonable costs for a D&D 5th edition campaign. And just like with Tilly, you get a pretty good overview. Pippa Tumblefoot, skilled chef, flavorful dishes, creative use of local ingredients, takes pride in sourcing ingredients from local farmers and forages, so her menu changes with the seasons to reflect what's fresh and available. And then here's the menu. Fire-roasted Cornish hen with lemon and thyme, mushroom and barley stew, stuffed squash blossoms, goat cheese and herb salad, honeyed carrots with fried sage, Pippa's famous apple pie. You already get this like history and relationship and connection to this local city all the way through. I'm going to add one more detail. I just asked it to populate some like farm information for me with the farmhand named Jonas Greenleaf, but just imagine this little tavern out in the middle of the woods by this city with the owner, the chef, the farmer all running it and really having this welcoming, inviting environment. It's amazing.
Dungeons and Dragons is a real serious problem. I began to look through the instruction manual and I see here how to cast magical spells and mage spells and cleric spells, and you go to the pages that it's listed on, in this instance page 41, and they have complete descriptions of how to cast spells and how to contact powerful spirits and how to use these spirits and these powers to overcome obviously evil or good. Here it says, it is important to remember that the source of all magic is the life force of the user. This is the teaching of the occult. This is exactly what we were introduced into in Star Wars and E.T., that there is some magical power, some life force that runs throughout the universe.
Welcome to the D&D School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. I see you're applying as a divination wizard, which probably means you already know what's coming next, but if you answer a couple of quick questions for me, I can process this application and you'll be on your way. Sure, sounds good. What are the 3 tenets of being a great wizard? Steal kills, hoard spells, and never take a hit for a fellow party member. Correct. Finish this sentence. Strength is to wizards as parties are to introverts. Explain. Fuck that shit, I'd rather stay home and read instead. Correct. A famous fighter once said, talk shit, get hit. What did the famous wizard say? Bro, if I get hit, I die. Correct. What is the Blade Ward cantrip useful for? It isn't. Correct. What is the common name for transmutation wizards? The kids with the pet rocks? Correct. Which subclass would be angry that they haven't been mentioned already? Bladesinger, who are commonly referred to as pick-me fighters. Correct. What are the components of the polymorph spell? Components are a conspiracy created by the government. Correct. And how do you convince people not to worry about it? I paper, ink, and incense at every town and call it even. Correct. When is it inappropriate to cast the fireball spell? Could you repeat the question? Of course. When is it inappropriate to cast the fireball spell? I don't understand the question. Sure, I'll ask it for you one more time. There isn't one. Correct. What should a wizard say if a barbarian is complaining about the use of the fireball spell?
Less pecs, more decks, my guy.
Correct. Is it ever appropriate to refer to one of your wizard tutors as daddy?
Yes.
Correct. Which one?
Necromancy.
Explain.
He's just trying to raise a family.
Welcome to the school.